you so much, Shweta, for joining us this afternoon, for taking out time for this webinar. We really, really appreciate it. So why don't we get started with an introduction of yourself, about your education and professional background, and about your current role.
Thanks, Aditya. I'm extremely excited to be part of this conversation today. As you introduced, I'm Shweta Mogha. I lead the talent acquisition vertical for North America operations at Amazon. Have got about 15 years of experience across talent acquisition.
Shweta, just a moment. I think your voice is breaking a little bit. Probably you need to adjust the microphone.
Is it sounding better?
It's perfect now. Thank you.
Great. As I was mentioning, I lead the talent acquisition vertical for North America operations at Amazon. Overall, about 15 plus years of experience, both in HR as well as talent acquisition. As a leader working across geographies in India, North America, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Africa. So tons of experience working across the geographies to lead the HR as well as the talent acquisition agenda. I'm passionate about diversity and inclusion, and it's exciting to be part of this webinar and share my insights on how you could prepare yourself better for the interviews.
Great, thank you so much. So my first question, Shweta, here is, what does a day of an HR and recruiting leader at Amazon looks like?
Well, pretty much same as any other leader in the organization. Amazon is a very, very fast-paced organization. My day typically begins with checking my emails. I try to reach office a bit early so that I can have some me time in terms of spending about 15 to 20 minutes browsing through my email box and prioritizing some of the tasks that I need to do for the day. The subsequent few hours are more about meeting the business leaders, understanding how our talent acquisition strategy is working currently and what is it that we need to customize. A lot of focus is in terms of what do we need to do better and building plans for future. Of course, then having interactions with your team members, doing your one-on-ones, and building up the roadmap for them.
Thank you. And Shweta, do you think that the recruiting practices have undergone any changes? If yes, then what are those major changes you see? Because it will be very helpful for our attendees right now who may be looking for a job now or in future. It'll be helpful for them to understand about the core structure of recruiting.
Sure, Aditya. I think last 5 or 6 years, the entire ecosystem around recruiting has changed completely. I'll start by saying rise of social media. The amount of effort, time that we are engaging on social media is humongous. And a lot of insights that I see is that people spend a considerable amount of time updating their social media profiles like LinkedIn profiles, Facebook, or even Instagram. So I think rise of social media has taken the recruiting industry by storm, I must say that. So a lot of focus that I see is around building your social media profile and taking it forward from there. The other piece which has worked extremely well in the current scenario is about the fact that a lot of recruiters themselves have been posting a lot of social media content to be able to attract talent. So it's become more two-way, if I could say so. It's not only about job seekers who are looking for a job, but it's also about companies promoting their brand and attracting top talent to join their organizations. I also believe that the job search has become much more personal in nature, which means it is all about collaborating, it is about networking, it is about connecting with people, and obviously, reaching out to the relevant set of people to find jobs. Another thing which has happened well in last couple of years is around automation, which means a lot of times the resumes that you actually post in or apply when you apply for a job, it's actually getting reviewed by a machine and not necessarily individuals. And hence it is extremely critical for you to be able to create the relevant resume and job application when you apply for the jobs.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much. So, Shweta, I have a follow-up question here. So you mentioned that social media is playing a great role both for job seekers and recruiters. Right. And I recently read a book and it was mentioned that Google is your new resume and more than 60% recruiters or hiring managers look at the candidate's social media profile, their social media activities before they make a final decision. How true
Right.
is that?
I absolutely agree to it. I think when you apply for a job or when you are giving an interview, your first instinct is that you actually log in onto Google and just research or type in the name of the company or the job that you're looking for, who's the interviewer, who is interviewing you. So definitely very much true. And I agree to what you said. Literally, every research now is indicating that 65 to 70% of the times people will Google and research about you before they actually appear for the interviews, and would also like to understand how the culture of your organization is. So a lot of these platforms like Glassdoor, wherein employees write the reviews and share how their experience has been working in an organization, becomes extremely critical.
Perfect. So for to all our attendees, please make sure that your social media profile is well clean before you apply for any job. Okay, great. So Shweta, my next question is, how can a student while in college start preparing for upcoming job hunt? What's the right time? Whether should they start in their second year, third year, in the final year of their probably engineering or management studies? What's the right time?
Well, Aditya, I think for students specifically, finding the first job and first break in a career is extremely difficult because you do not bring in that wealth of experience that you can talk about into your interview process. A lot of times when you are working for, in a particular organization, it's easier to sell yourself for your subsequent jobs. But for students, I think it is critical for them to start preparing at least, a year in advance before they actually start looking for jobs. That would actually mean that when they go in for their internships, they pick up the best internships or the projects, or even if they're trying to do any specific project within their college itself, they pick up a project which has some impact and they're able to talk through it in their interview process. So I would say typically a year in advance is what you should start preparing. This would start with simple things like having a resume built up, wherein you can talk about what are you passionate about, what are your skills, that you've developed during your course of education, what are some of the projects that you have worked upon, and also, update your LinkedIn profile so that you can start, researching about the kind of jobs which are available in the market. Lot of effort and energy is needed in terms of matching your skill set with what the organizations are essentially looking for, and that can happen when you have your profile built up on a social platform and can review and check what are the job opportunities which are coming in your area of interest or your field.
That's perfect. Thank you. So, Shweta, as you mentioned that these days resumes are filtered using an automated softwares, and there are a lot out in the market. And I read somewhere that these softwares usually just look for the keywords. They divide your resume into multiple segments of work experience, college experience. Is there any particular format that you would recommend candidates to use so that their resume is filtered in the best manner using these softwares? And are there any tips that you'd like to give to our candidates that they should not use while creating their resume so that they don't fall into the trap of these automated softwares and they don't lack opportunities?
Yeah, I think let me start by saying, Aditya, that your resumes have to get customized according to the job that you are applying for. One size fits all is not the approach that works in today's scenario. So if you have just one version of your resume, definitely it is not going to work out for all the job profiles that you're applying for. So I think the starting process is to read the role and understand the skills that you need for that specific job. Customize your resume according to that job requirement. There are plenty of templates available on Google, and I do recommend that you select format which is viable and available and widely used by different companies. Typically your resume should begin with your name, should carry definitely a resume summary which talks about your previous experiences or what your skill sets are and what you bring onto the table as an individual. Start with your experiences in a chronological order, talk about your recent experience, and then go towards your previous experiences. Highlight some of the key aspects that you have achieved in your career over a period of time. But most importantly, as you said, look at those keywords that are mentioned in the job description and customize your resume according to that. Your resume should definitely carry your email address and your telephone number or a contact number, because most of the recruiters do try to reach out to you over email and on your phone. So if you do not mention that, it becomes challenging for recruiters to be able to reach out to you. A crisp summary of your achievements is extremely important. Another tip that I definitely like to give is keep your resumes, short and crisp. Do not try to add too much of information onto the resume and make it like a 5-pager, 6-pager thesis that the recruiters have to read, or the machine learning would probably just get confused with so much of information that they'll not be able to find the keywords into the resume. Keep your resume at best to about 2 to 3 pages. Ideally, 2 pages is what I recommend, and definitely customize it as per the requirement of the job.
Thank you so much. So again, one more follow-up question here, Shweta. So you mentioned that definitely you should not put too much information on your resume, but recently I came across few candidates and they have a lot of experience, about 15 to 20 years of experience at very good companies, and they want to mention everything and anything that they have done in the last 20 years. Does that apply to very, very experienced candidates as well, that they should keep their resume to 2 pages?
Well, yes, Aditya, not every experience is worth explaining. What you did 20 years back may not be relevant in the current context. Definitely share some of the critical positions that you have worked for. And as I said, you definitely need to understand what is that job looking for. And if there are, any experiences in past which are, in correlation to that specific job application, you're welcome to mention that, but not necessarily every single experience that you have in your resume is going to link to the job profile. What you did at the beginning of your career, maybe when you was just out of college, may not be relevant in the current scenario. So last 5 to 6 experiences, if you've got like 20-25 years of experience, I think is a good enough detail to mention onto your resume, and not necessarily clutter it with too much of information what you did 25-20 years back.
Sounds good. So I'll take a pause here again, and to all our participants, you can ask your question on the YouTube channel, on the chat box. You can enter your question and I'll speak it out to Shweta. So continuing with my questions here. So what are the mistakes to avoid during the job application process? Do you have any specific tips for that?
Yeah, I think the broad tips that I would like to definitely give is in terms of, customizing the resume, as I said. Most of the times what I see is when people apply, even at Amazon, they try to just send, their resume the way it is in the current context, without understanding what that job actually entails them to do. And we are not able to figure out whether they would be a right fit for that specific job or not. Most of the hiring managers want information around how your current experience relates to the job that they are looking for. So one of the most common concerns that we have are incomplete applications. A lot of times people just want to be in the hurry of completing the job application process and may not be able to completely fill it. Small and simple things like leaving some of the key data fields blank could be a great challenge for us. For example, for most of the roles that we hire for, a bachelor's degree is a mandated aspect. It's the basic qualification that we need. If you do not mention your educational qualifications, or you skip your critical educational qualifications, while screening the resume, it would just go off. So don't leave any fields blank. Don't really, not mention what your critical experiences are. A lot of times people try to apply for a job application, but they turn in, into it very, very late, which means we're almost closing the job when people start applying for that job. So be an early adopter. If you see a job requisition that you wish to apply for, please do apply for it, because there are tons and thousands of people who apply for the jobs. And if you're too late in your application, it may definitely not come across, to the recruiter. Um, Another common mistake, Aditya, that I see is spelling errors and grammatical errors. A lot of times it may just seem as simple as that, but you will notice that if there are grammatical errors and the spelling mistakes in your resume, it could definitely be a concern area for a lot of hiring managers. And this is a very simple tip. If you're not very good at putting your resume together or your cover letter together, uh, ensure that you seek help from your friends, from your colleagues, professional counselors like me, to be able to help you in that process, and also customize it as per the job requirement. A couple of other tips, if you have any gaps in your resume, I think it is best to spell out what you were doing at that point of time, rather than leaving the employers guessing in terms of what really happened during that time. It's not a taboo to have career gaps. People, take breaks for enhancing their education or spending time with their family, etc. But I think it needs to be spelled out so that we know, what exactly happened. Putting in right dates of your different stints in different organizations is extremely important, so it does not come across that you have either duplicate jobs at that point of time, or you are not working. It could be confusing for the recruiters when they review it. Um, also do include any specific attachments that the job requirement needs you to do that. A lot of times people miss out on their cover letters. Cover letters are extremely important. Gives us the gist of what you've done in past. So if it's mandated for you to have a cover letter, ensure that you have your cover letter in place. Also, another piece that I'd like to suggest to all my colleagues out here who are logged in, when you apply for a job, read through the job description. Applying for jobs wherein you are extremely overqualified or underqualified could actually lead to rejection. So if you are a leader and you've got 15 years of experience and you're applying for an entry level job, um, it would just result in a lot of questions around why you would like to come in at that level. So these are some of my tips that I would like to suggest.
Great. Thank you so much, Shweta. This was very, very helpful. And in the last 5 minutes, we are flooded with so many questions. So let me get started with them one by one. So we have our first question from Arya. Arya says, what do you think about pictures on resume? Yeah, even I was always confused about this point. Should we put our professional pictures or not?
Absolutely. It really helps if you have a picture on your resume. People get to see who you are. I would not say it's mandated, but it's a good to have thing, because most of the times we'd go back definitely on to LinkedIn profiles, or social media to check the pictures. Use your judgment. I would definitely say it helps.
Okay, perfect. Another question that we have from Gennaro is, how critical is a cover letter? And I think you already answered it about cover letters. I have a follow-up question on this one. What should be the structure of a cover letter? Should it be an exact copy of your resume? Should it say exactly the same experience that a candidate has defined in the resume? Or is there any standard structure or what exactly do you want to see in a cover letter?
Yeah, I think very good question, Aditya. And I'd like to say cover letter should definitely not be same as what your resume reads through, because that's the information that is already present in your resume. Cover letter should definitely talk about a gist of what you have done and how your experiences relate to this specific job. Why are you applying for this job, and how does your skill set and the achievements that you have had in past relate to this specific job that you are applying for? What excites you about this role and this company is something that you should definitely talk about in your cover letter. And hence, customizing your cover letters is extremely important as well.
Okay, great. So our next question is from Albert. Albert says, is a curriculum vitae inappropriate to submit instead of a resume? And Shweta, if you can also tell us the difference between a curriculum vitae and a resume, that'll be great.
Well, in today's scenario, these words are used actually interchangeably. So for me, I think uh, a job application should entail um, whatever you want to call it, you know, a resume or a curriculum vitae. But definitely, it should talk about who you are as an individual, what skill sets that you bring onto the table, and what have been your past experiences. There is no hard and fast rule, and there is technically these words have started being used as interchangeably, and there is no difference in today's scenario whether you're calling it as curriculum vitae or you're talking about your resume. It's about what you bring onto the table, what your experiences are, and how they correlate to the job that you are actually applying for. Your resume should be data driven. It should talk about how you can add value to the business and take it to the next level. I think that's more important.
That's perfect. Okay, so the next question is from Alexandria Brown. Alexandria asked, how do you present yourself during an interview for an internship you don't meet all of the marks for, but are very interested in? I think this is situation of 90% of candidates.
Absolutely. I think, as I said, researching about the organization, researching about what that internship would entail, right, is extremely important. Even if you meet 50% of the criteria there, you should be able to tell to the interviewers why you are interested in that role. Also, be authentic in your conversations of saying, this is what I bring onto the table, and these are 2 or 3 areas wherein I would love to hone my skills and present myself to your organization. Not every role is meant for you, and be ready to face some rejections as well. They may have candidates which will be overqualified, or at least meeting the broad criteria that they need interns for. It's a competitive world, but what you can definitely do during your conversation is draw inferences from your previous projects, previous stints that you have done within your college, or internships that you have done in past, wherein you can correlate those things to your new job that you're applying for, an internship that you're applying for. Whatever you are passionate about, whatever your strength areas are, should definitely get highlighted. Be authentic, be genuine in saying, these are the 2 areas that I'm extremely confident about in my profile when I come in as an intern. But at the same point of time, these are 2 or 3 areas that I would love to hone my skills on as I go forward in this journey.
That's a great answer. Thank you so much, Shweta. And I have a follow-up question on Alexandria's question. So, what's the right time to apply for for an internship, especially at big companies like Amazon, or if I talk about Google, Deloitte? Because uh, I heard that these internships are excuse me, these internships are usually filled 3 to 4 months in advance. So suppose if I want to go for a summer internship in next
Yeah.
June, what's the right time to apply?
Most of the times the companies actually start interviewing in spring, for anything which is coming up in summer. You would also see that each college would have companies coming in into their college, and talking about their roles. Large organizations like Amazon, Google, Deloitte, as you talked about, typically take the interns, by approaching the colleges themselves. So you may not be able to apply and get an internship, except for some of the roles wherein we partner with a couple of organizations on the military hiring space. People who have got previous military experience, like Hire Our Heroes, we partner with them and provide them some fellowship programs. But that's also like once in a quarter, which is predefined. So most of the times you would see that these companies, larger companies, would reach out to you in your college and offer internships. That's when you can apply for that. If these companies are not reaching out to your colleges, I'll be very honest, it may be difficult for you to grab internship, because it's a very, very structured program that most of the large organizations have today.
Okay, perfect. So I'll again take one more pause here, as I can see a lot of new attendees have joined in the last 5 to 10 minutes. And if you guys have missed the process of asking question here, you can put your question in the comment box on the right-hand side. And to all our current attendees, please take a moment to share this webinar on your LinkedIn and on your Facebook. It's going very well. We are talking about some very, very useful information about interview tips and tricks. So please take a moment to share it with your friends and your network. Okay, I'll again continue here. So my next question is, how do you respond to question where you have to speak of previous experience similar to the role, but you don't have said experiences? This question is from Alexandria.
Aditya, I think if your role is similar to what you have done in past, I'm sure you would have encountered multiple opportunities to participate or contribute to a larger project. Draw out, those kind of experiences from those experiences that you have had. Try to build that correlation of what you did. Let me give you an example. If people management is a critical aspect for that role, and you have managed, cross-functional teams, but not necessarily people under you, you can custom your answer by saying that I've worked on large projects wherein, I had the opportunity to not necessarily manage these people directly, but work cross-functionally with them. And then how did you set about goals for them? How did you go about dividing the work amongst the different team members and bring them together as a team? Talking about some of the challenges that you faced while leading that specific team and how did you overcome that are some of the things that people definitely share in the interview process. So it is about looking at what the current role is and reflecting on your previous experiences and drawing inferences from that as to how you can correlate your previous experiences to the experience which is actually needed in the current context.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's helpful. So we have a next question from Veronica. Veronica asked, do you have any tips for students who don't have much experience and want to get an internship in computer science field?
Well, as I mentioned, Aditya, a lot of the organizations actually reach out to the campuses and offer internships. But if that's not the case for your specific college or your campus, per se, feel free to research a bit. Which are the new startups which are coming up in the current scenario? A lot of these startups are happy to extend internships to people so that people can get experiences. Research in your area, in the location that you are at. What are some of the companies which are expanding or going in an expansion mode? Reaching out to those companies leaders can definitely make a difference. So do your research, log on to LinkedIn, type in the name of the company and look at the people list which appears on the LinkedIn page. Reach out to them and talk to them. Write a nice cover letter that I'm interested in your organization. I want to do my internship. This is what I've learned so far. Is there an opportunity for me to come in? Don't shy away from saying that if it is not possible in the current organization, can you refer me to somebody whom I could reach out to? You have to leverage that network which is there. Also reach out to your friends, your seniors in the college who may be working in certain companies. Check from them if they can help you connecting to the right people. As I said, networking is extremely critical. You can reach out to people that you know. It could be your friends, it could be your ex-colleagues, or seniors in the college, or your family friends, and offer. I think at the time, and this is my biggest tip that I have at least followed in my career, don't run after money. Not every internship will be about how much money you get. It is about the learning that you would get in that specific organization. And if it means that you can volunteer and do some pro bono work just to learn and get the experience, please go ahead and do that.
Great. So Veronica, I have one more point to add to Shweta's answer. So when I was searching for my internship during my master's program at Duke, I really wanted to work with some of the recent startups. So I went to crunchbase.com and I pulled out the list of all startups who got up to $20 to $25 million funding. That is the Series A or B round of funding. I pulled out that list and I reached out to all those startups because they recently got funded and it was very easy to approach them and they had new roles available. And it's always the case. So feel free to reach
Absolutely.
out to all the startups who recently got funded. Subscribe to Crunchbase newsletter. You get it. You can get that news every single week, and that will be very, very helpful. Okay, cool.
And
So,
to
Mhm.
add, Aditya, there are a lot of these platforms that are currently coming up, wherein you could actually put in your resume and reach out to a relevant set of people. As such, Crunchbase is definitely one of
Great, awesome. So the next question from Arya again is, do HR managers prefer the standard resume format, or is it okay to get more creative with your resume as long as it's easy to read?
Absolutely. There is no right or wrong way. Definitely get creative in your resumes. It catches the eye of a lot of recruiters. If you've done something, creative, catchy cover letters definitely, attract a lot of recruiters as such. So till the time your resume is simple to read, brings out what you want to bring out in terms of your experiences and your skill set, it's absolutely fine to get creative on your resume.
Perfect. So the next question I have from Shweta Mogha is, how important is networking to get to the next role?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. Networking is definitely important in today's world, and as I said at the beginning of our conversation, networking, is leading to about 60 to 70% of job offers these days. It's not about making connections, uh, only when you need a job. It's an ongoing process. Networking typically is a mutually beneficial professional relationship between two people. And these days, a lot of companies, actually host networking events so that they can meet the candidates. Definitely look out, on social media. What are some of the networking events happening in your area of interest, and register for them. Invest in those relationships. Most of the times people want to just say, how can I benefit out of this networking session? How can I sell myself? It is not about selling yourself, in the networking sessions. It's about building those mutually beneficial professional relationships. And it goes both ways. You have to give first before you can ask for something. And that means you need to really be open to having dialogues with people who are like minded. You need to prepare before you actually attend some of these networking events and plan for those networking events. What do you want to achieve from this networking that you're trying to do? Do you want to know more about career opportunities in your field? What are the new things which are coming up, or do you want to switch your career altogether and want to understand what's happening in the new area of interest that you have? Accordingly, you need to have your conversations. When I go for networking sessions, a lot of time I also have in mind who are the specific people, whom I want to interact with. And I don't shy away from walking across to people and self-introducing myself by saying, hey, I'm Shweta. How did you get to know about this networking event? And that's an icebreaker essentially, and gets people talking and taking it forward. Very recently, I attended Women in Manufacturing networking event, which happened in Denver. And I had a brilliant opportunity to just walking across to people, introducing myself, understanding what they're doing, and offering my advice to them before I could seek advice from them. Typically, if you build a connect in a networking session, definitely follow it up with a follow-up email within 24 hours, and be in touch with people. If you don't reach out to people and don't remain in touch with them, don't follow them on how they're progressing in their careers, and suddenly reach out to them after 6 months saying, hey, I'm looking for a job opportunity, can you help? It never works. It's consistent, it's an ongoing process, and you need to build up networking process as such.
Thank you so much, Shweta. And your answer reminded me of a statement that someone told me when I started my job search process, that when nothing is working, do networking. I took it seriously and it really worked out very well for me. So
Well,
definitely.
And Aditya, thank you for that, because you and I connected through networking itself. Somebody introduced me to you, and we started chatting, and we decided it is of mutual interest to have such kind of conversation. So that's how it is. Reach out, find people, talk to them, don't shy away, explore opportunities.
Yes, definitely. Great. So here's our next question from Manushi Lehri. Should we add our resumes while reaching out? I think she means on email.
Yeah, I think my recommendation always has been first connect with them, build that rapport before you start asking for a job. I don't know you as an individual when you reach out to me, or you do not know that individual before they reach out to you. The first step has to be, what do you like about their profile? What do you Why do you want to connect with them? And some of the small tips, like, I saw your LinkedIn profile and I'm extremely impressed by the experiences that you bring onto the table. I would love to connect with you. um, uh, that's it. If you're not meeting them face to face, if you are meeting them face to face, it's all about understanding what they do, how they work, what are some of the common interests that you have, and then connect with them. Post that, reach out to them with your resume to ask for something. At the first go, I don't know if it works well. It doesn't work well for me, at least.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, so we have another question. I'm currently in the process of applying to jobs at Amazon. What's the best way to get yourself to stand out when applying for full-time jobs? That's tough.
Well, as I said, first is networking. Amazon gets thousands of applications. We definitely review a lot of applications. But if your application is not customized according to the role that we have, it's sometimes difficult for us to be able to browse through those applications and come back to you. What is the role? All companies, including Amazon today, has their site, job site, wherein all the jobs are listed, according to the geography, according to the function that you want to apply for. So first of all, log on to that site, identify which roles that you want to apply for. Definitely apply online, but equally log on to the social media. Try finding out who are the people in that company that you can reach out to, and pass on your resume to them so that they are able to recommend you. Referrals work big time. So if somebody can refer you for a role, it will definitely be very useful. But as I said, your resume should also talk about the skills that you bring onto the table, and also be in line with the job opening that the company has. If you have a standard resume, it may not work, because there are keywords that people look at. They want to see what you bring onto the table in relation to that specific job, and that's what you need to customize your resume for.
Perfect. So, Shweta, my next question is how to find recruiting and hiring managers. I think every candidate who's applying for job position, whether it's a small company or big company, a lot of candidates reach out to hiring managers and recruiters on LinkedIn with the connect request, maybe sometimes with the email, but barely 5 to 10% people get response. And I can understand this pain. When you receive like 100 requests, you cannot respond to every single person, right? So what's the best way to reach out to recruiting and the hiring managers?
Well, this is a tough one, Aditya, and there is no right or wrong answer onto it. But I'll definitely say, when a lot of times the organizations, post the jobs, you can see who the recruiter is. So feel free to reach out to the recruiter. But most importantly, as I said, use your network. Anybody that you know in that company or has worked in past, if you can connect with them and seek and leverage their relationships, that is the best way to go out. Finding out hiring managers is technically the most difficult part, because most of the times hiring managers are not the ones who post the requisitions. But definitely go onto social media and see. A lot of times people do post specific comments of saying, I'm expanding in so and so geography, I'm building a large team. And this is one of the trends which is catching up now, wherein not only recruiters but also hiring managers are actually posting, what are they looking for, or what roles are they, they have currently open, and they encourage them to, you to connect with them. But at the same point of time, as I said, networking is critical. Do this company have any networking event happening? Like very recently, Amazon had Amazon Career Day, wherein we had more than 2 lakh people come in, and talk to our business leaders, talk to our recruiting leaders. So leverage those opportunities, and a lot of these companies today are doing such kind of events and networking sessions. That's when you can reach out to them, exchange your cards, or seek their information in terms of how you could reach out to them. And if look at your own profile and see who are some of the people. Sometimes just doing sending random connections as well works, without really asking for a job.
Yes. And to add to Shweta's point, we identified this pain in networking in job hunt process, where you reach out to thousands of people and then you get just 1 or 2% response. And that's the whole objective behind starting High Counselor. So if you want to network and connect with company insiders, definitely check out highcounselor.com as well. So my next question here, Shweta, is, and I think we are reaching the top of the hour. So I'll take 1 or 2 more questions before we
Sure.
end. How can a candidate create his or her personal brand during an interview? It's a very small time period, right? I think just 1 to 2 hours. So what are the tips and tricks that you would recommend to instantly create a very positive impression and a very good personal brand?
I think for me as a recruiting leader, when I meet people and I try to, identify whether they are right fit for the company, I think for me, it's very important how authentic you are as an individual. In order to build your personal brand, I think your personality should shine through. What are you as an individual? What I'll say impacts you, motivates you. For example, if some you are someone who values being forthright and honest above anything else, you should be able to talk through that in your examples of how you work with others and approach problems that arise in your professional life. And how do you use your values and core to be able to resolve those situations per se? So it's very, very important for you to let your personality shine through. Don't try to pretend and be someone who you are not. If you do not like high paced environment, long working hours, or non-traditional job descriptions, startups is not for you, because these are the companies wherein they would look at people who can roll up their sleeves, they are passionate about what they do, can put in long working hours and define their own roadmap. If that's what you love, go ahead and apply for a startup. Understand the ethos of the organization and link your personality to those ethos, and see if it is a right fit for you. More authentic and genuine you are in your conversations, you will be able to shine through in that interview process. Talk about what you value and how it correlates to the values of the organization that you're applying.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Shweta. So I have one more question here.
Right.
Do you think writing a follow-up email after applying for job creates any difference?
Absolutely. I've seen that sometimes, being persistent definitely helps. And I'm giving you a very recent example. About 2 days back, I got a ping from one of the recruiters saying that she's looking for a job opportunity and, would love to work with me. And we said, fine, we do not have full-time roles, but maybe we could look at something contractual. And she sent the CV across to me, which I passed on to one of my team members. Um, and after 48 hours, I got a follow-up emails asking, Shweta, hey, I'd shared my resume with you. Do you think we would have some time to connect and talk about it? It brought back to me that I need to get back to this candidate. There are a lot of times when we have so many candidates coming in, and it may be difficult for us to respond back to each one of them. So yes, sending follow-up email does create an impact. So go ahead and don't be shy from writing a follow-up email on your job application, or if you have not heard from the recruiter after your interview as well, feel free to write a follow-up email. The follow-up email should definitely talk about how you feel you could be a better fit for that specific role, and how you could contribute to the organization. So express your interest.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And just curious to know, Shweta, like how many email or the LinkedIn request do you get, or any recruiter gets from a big company? I assume it must be in hundreds.
Yes, it is in hundreds, but we also have to remember that each of the recruiters chase their own goals, and they're always at the lookout of right candidates. So if you are the right candidate for the job, and you are sending a follow-up email, most likely people will follow up and reply back to you.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So one last question. Okay, we have got another question on our chat. Really want to ask this. Okay, so I have noticed that some companies have pre-recorded video interviews instead of in-person or over the phone interviews. The experience can be nerve-breaking. How can you feel more at ease?
Yes, very good question. In fact, as I said, leveraging technologies, is something which most of the organizations are now experimenting with. I think if you speak to the recruiter, uh, I think it's about preparing for the interview, whether it is face to face, whether it is video, whether it is Zoom, or whether it is through telephonic interview. First is you need to understand what the process is. If there are video interviews wherein people are asking you to, just record your answers, and I know HireView is one such tool that Amazon also experimented with some time back. Um, it's about practicing. So, uh, first of all, you have to understand that there is nobody on the other side. So looking into the camera, talking through some of your experiences is critical. And hence, it is important for you to practice this before you actually get into that interview process. What do you need to practice? Because you may not know the questions as such. It is best to ask the recruiter some of these questions as to what can you expect in that video interview. What is it going to be more around what you have done in past, or is there a problem that they're going to ask you to solve? So feel free to ask those questions from the recruiters and then prepare accordingly. There is no harm in sitting down in front of a mirror and practicing your answers.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you so much, Shweta, for all your answers, for very, very helpful information. And I truly enjoyed this conversation. And as we are reaching the top of the hour, so it's now time to wrap up the event. So I really want to thank you.
Thank you, Aditya, for inviting. Thank you for inviting, Aditya. Awesome. I enjoyed I think this was a really highly interactive session, one of the best that I've done as well. So all the best to everyone for their job search. And thank you, Aditya, once again.
Awesome.